a big thing that I wish I did before I left my previous job to start my business is before you quit, get approved for line of credits. All that kind of stuff, because you can get better rates and a bigger amount being an employee than being a new business owner.
Right. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 2020 podcast, bringing clarity to business, entrepreneurship, and life. Thank you so much for joining us again. As always, before we start, I'd like to encourage you, please give us a rating on the Apple Podcast app or on Spotify or on YouTube if you're watching this as well. And also take a little screenshot, post it up on Instagram, give me a little shout out, let me know what you're thinking, what your takeaways are from this episode. And I know there's going to be some amazing takeaways because as usual, we have a fantastic guest. Over the years, I've had a lot of different people ask me questions regarding finances, and whether they are new students or they are people starting out with new businesses, they have questions about what it takes, how much it costs, or how to work off their debt. And I thought it would be best for us to speak to an expert on the topic. And I have somebody here who is going to really help us out with that. And I know generally speaking, we don't consider finance and this type of thing to be the sexiest of topics.
Never.
But that's because you haven't heard Vishal talk about it yet. And I know he's going to make this as entertaining, as interesting as possible. And Vishal here is a financial planner here in the Vancouver area. In his young career already, has had experience working with big banks and working in the independent section of the finance industry. He's been invited to speak at UBC and SFU, which for people who are not in our area are the two bigger universities in the Vancouver area. He's been invited on podcasts, and he's already started his own company, his own business called Portfolio Financial Concierge, having a full complement of planners, accountants, lawyers, realtors, and mortgage brokers on their team. And if that was not enough, Vishal also spends time doing pro bono work, helping planning for high school students and post-secondary students, preparing them for entering the workforce and getting on the right track early on, because we all know how important that is. So now that I've taken up all the time doing the intro, I think that's a wrap. We're done. That's it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Please welcome Vishal Gill, my good friend and amazing financial planner. I'm really excited to hear a lot of your information and get you to share it with us.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here.
Super excited, and
appreciate it.
I'm going to take that snippet and I'm just going to have it playing every morning. I think I'm going to walk with this. I might not fit. My head will be too big. I'm 6 inches taller.
That's awesome, man. I'm glad. If it helps you walk a little, you're already so tall.
Yeah.
If it helps you walk a little taller and have a little more confidence, that's great, man.
Absolutely.
Because I know that you exude that and you share that confidence with other people. And so if you have a little more, you have more to give to other people.
I appreciate it.
So Vishal, tell us a little bit about how you got into this, into the financial world and kind of sharing your knowledge with other people.
Yeah, for me, it was more of a necessity for myself to get into the financial industry. Mm-hmm. Growing up, grew from humble beginnings. I saw my mom, she's always been my role model, work extremely hard, 3 jobs, still had positivity, good energy, always, there and present. But I thought, why can't we work hard? Because as long as you want something bad enough, the hard work will come.
Right.
But why can't we work smart? And it was so hard growing up to get that information. I didn't know where to go. Nothing really resonated with me. I didn't understand how it worked. You would hear all these things. They sound very cliche. Create multiple sources of income, this and this. But I just didn't understand it. So going from there, I entered the workforce, made some mistakes that everyone really makes.
Right.
And by necessity, I started researching for my own practice. What can I learn about finances, and what can I then share with my family and friends? As I started learning, I started sharing it. Based off that, they started telling me, "Oh man, you should do this for work and this and this." I was kind of intimidated because I didn't have the background of it.
Yeah.
But started studying it, started working in it, found the passion for it, and that's when I made the career change to go in finance. Because, like I said, when you want something bad enough, it's almost that burning fire in you where you need to be doing this.
Yeah.
And that's really when I made the change. To what you said, my whole purpose is to teach people.
Yeah.
If where I got to in 5-10 years, if someone I do pro bono work for can be up there in 2 years, then that's a win. I can sleep easy at night.
That's awesome, man. It's really nice and it's very refreshing to hear that, because I from the sense that I get, a lot of times you meet people who are in that field, in that industry, and you don't really get the feeling from them that they're out to really help
Absolutely.
Other people, maybe to some level, but you know, behind the scenes, they're ultimately looking at their own gain and benefit. And that maybe comes from some of the news stories we've heard of, like the people doing the Ponzi schemes and all these other things, right?
Yeah.
But you know, knowing you personally, I know you're coming from a good place, and it's really nice to know that you're sharing that literacy and that knowledge with others.
Yeah.
And that you have a passion for it. That's always key too,
Totally.
right? You're not just clocking in and clocking out. This is something you're doing day and night.
Absolutely.
So tell me about like kind of process. So you started working with some big organizations or banks in the beginning, and then you kind of went from there?
Yeah, so when I entered the industry, my biggest thing is I knew my why.
Yeah.
Which it was always the hardest part, in my opinion, to find out what your why is. So once I found that, I knew I want to help people. I want to have that sense of fulfillment. I want to feel good about the work I did. So that was my kind of prerequisite that I took to the industry, which really didn't help much because there were so many different ways that could go.
Yeah.
I then started getting interviews of different institutions. So the big banks, you mentioned, I had some experience in that. Also, companies that worked in finance but were captive companies, meaning that you have one company that owns you as a parent company, and you have to sell that product to push that agenda. And you were talking about things we hear in the news. We've all heard stuff about the banks. Some of it fair, some of it not fair. But that was what I didn't want to do, is help all my people, but only inside this one little box, because I had an agenda I had to fulfill, or goals or quotas I had to hit. So that's how I came across the independent side. And it was funny because my exact conversation with my business partner now was, if your purpose is to help people, then you need to be in the independent side. And full disclosure, it's going to be very, very difficult because you're going to have to work with all the different companies. The learning curve is massive, but it's worth it. So I just kind of jumped right into it, and I thought, like, let me just do the independent side. I learned it. I worked. After I worked, I continued to work at home. You're always on your phone. This whole self-employed, not so glamorous side that people don't tell you about.
100%.
But based off that, I really fell in love with the process of, how to help people by being independent, and how that really differentiates me. And that's kind of what shot me into opening a Portfolio Financial Concierge. Is there was a need for having regulated, trustworthy, fully licensed, designated people to help you in all aspects of finance. So you mentioned about the realtors, the mortgage brokers, the finance, the accountants, the lawyers, all that stuff. It's like a one-stop shop that is there to help you. And we're independent, so we don't have any secret agendas. Our agenda is to help our clients. And that is ultimately what I wanted. It took a little bit to get there because I had to navigate through the different institutions of what made the most sense for me. But that's always what my why was. That's awesome. I kept going until I found that.
That's fantastic, man. And that is, the right path is often the hard path. Absolutely, right? So that's awesome that you chose to do that and you committed to it, because many of us would have just taken what was sort of easier and kind of laid out for us. So that's great, man. One thing I want to quickly mention to the listener, the viewer, is, of course, we're talking about these different roles and these different people involved in Vishal's organization here, realtors and mortgage brokers and things. And you may not be considering speaking with any of these people just yet, but it's always important to keep that in the back of your mind when the opportunity does arise down the road, maybe. In the short term, Vishal is going to give us some real awesome, actionable advice and tips on different phases of your life. As I mentioned, whether you might be a student just graduating, new optometrist, or other field. And we're also going to touch on this time of year, the holiday season, and how hectic it can get, and how worried we are about breaking the bank and losing our savings. And so he's going to give us some amazing tips. So why don't we dive into what you call sort of the 3 phases or the 3 business cycles?
Yes, yeah. So generally, exactly to what Harbir was saying, our industry has a problem of being, how can I say, not really interesting, not sexy, not fun,
Until now.
So sit down wherever you are, pull over the card, but it's about to get crazy. But yeah, it's one of those things that I'll try my best to do it. But the thing about finance, you may not fall specifically to all these things, but the conceptual knowledge will all be the same. So my job at my company is more sort of client acquisition and the original financial plan, setting it out. And we usually see 3 business cycles, to your point. The first one we'll talk about is students. Education is getting more and more expensive, so students are graduating with student loans. So, you and I have both been there. We graduate. We're finally ready to go into adulthood. I can't wait to, buy all the things I saw on Instagram that I can never afford. Right? I'm not a window shopper anymore.
Yeah.
So, I'm gonna go to Cactus. I'm gonna buy the nice clothes, buy the jewelry. Get a car, get a house, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But you're entering with an anchor around you in the form of a large sum of student debt, student loans. So really, those conversations are kind of, do I defer living my life until a little bit later? Do I just live my life and defer this problem, deal with it later on?
Right.
But usually the best thing is be a happy medium in the middle. So a couple of advices or a couple pieces of advice I have is, first off, I'm sure we'll talk about this a bunch through the segment, but budget. Have a budget. It is the most important thing. It is your foundation. Regardless what happens to your income, your budget should always be there. It's a difficult thing to start because a lot of people will start a budget, but then they'll just forget about it. You set it and forget it, which never works.
Right.
So what I recommend is, if you haven't done a budget before, or if you're not exceptional at doing a budget, follow this form. I call it the 50-30-20 rule.
Okay.
So when you have your budget, what you want to do is always plan in percentages, especially if you're coming out of university into the workforce.
Okay.
Because is their income usually going to be the same their entire life?
No.
It'll go up,
right.
Hopefully.
Well, we'll talk about that a little bit as you become a self-employed and business owner and that. But anyway.
Yeah, it'll go up and down.
Ideally, it goes up.
Ideally. Yeah. So why not plan in percentages?
Yeah.
Because as your income increases, your plans will stay in force.
Versus fixed dollar amounts.
Exactly. Because then you may outlive your money, your pension might not be the same, or your savings might not be the same, because lifestyle inflation. When people's money goes up, they start spending more.
100%.
But if your budgets aren't keeping up, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So 50% of your money, you always want to allocate that to your cost of living.
Okay.
So your fixed expenses. So your mortgage, your car, your cell phone bill. If you have fixed debts, for example, student loan, all that kind of stuff. So your fixed expenses, that is 50%. By doing that, it also gives you the gut check of, can I afford to take on this extra liability or this extra thing that I want to buy, this toy?
Right.
If it doesn't fit within my 50%, maybe not.
Okay.
But if my income has gone up and it does fit within my 50%, then sure, I can get it. 50% fixed income, it doesn't count as Netflix. Like that's not a fixed expense, right?
Okay,
so that's I know
that falls into a different category.
Falls into a different one, right? Yeah. Disney and all these other ones. But 50% is your fixed expenses.
Okay.
20% is
like living expenses.
That you need. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
20% is going to be what you pay yourself.
Okay.
So that's going to be your insurances, your investments, your emergency fund. What you pay yourself is always going to be that 20%. That should be your goal. Sure, if you can do more, that's even better, but 20% should be where you're at.
Okay.
And that's going to be everything automatically. So when you get paid, that 20% automatically gets transferred out, whether it's an investment, your insurance costs, you're transferring to your savings account as an emergency fund, all that stuff. With technology nowadays, we can have automatic transfers just happen.
Yep.
Granted, it's a lot easier when you're an employee and you have paychecks coming in. If you're self-employed,
That's true.
That's true,
but you can still get it set up, right?
You can still get it set up. There's a way. So 20% you pay yourself, and the remaining 30%, I'm not great at math, but I'm pretty sure that's 30%.
I think so.
That is going to be for your fun.
Okay. That's a pretty big chunk for fun.
That's a pretty big chunk. So a lot of people get worried. Like when I first sit with them, they'll have I don't even ask them, but they'll bring their budget. Okay, so what do I need to cross out? I'm like, I don't even care. Like I'm not gonna go through your budget and be like, nope.
Yeah.
I can give you the framework, the conceptual ideas, because whether I'm here or not, I want you to be financially more literate and a little bit better at it. So 30%, as long as you have that 50% coming out automatically, you can rest assured that your fixed expenses are taken care of. 20%, you can sleep easy knowing that your retirement is being funded, your insurances are being funded, your emergency fund is being funded, all that stuff is good. 30% you can spend on whatever.
Okay.
That can be your dinners, your Netflix, your shopping for clothes, all that stuff can be. Vacations, 30%, that's why it seems large.
Yeah.
But a chunk of that will go for vacations as well, small trips,
right.
gas, all that kind of stuff. But a lot of people are like, hey, I feel guilty spending my money. I'm like, well, you feel guilty because you don't have a plan for the rest of it.
Right.
If your plan is being taken care of, that 30%, you don't feel guilty
That's
about.
true.
So that is the foundational number one thing if you're a student coming out of university, or even if you're in university. There's never a bad time to create a budget and follow the 50-30-20 rule. 50% fixed expenses, 30% your fun, I guess.
Yeah, fun.
That's like a tongue twister.
Yeah.
And 20% pay yourself.
Got it.
That's the framework.
And just to clarify again, that 20% that pay yourself, that's money that you're investing long term.
Yes.
Okay, pensions or whatever.
Pensions, TFSAs, for down payment, for a wedding.
In the U.S., would that fall into the 401?
401k, yeah.
401k, okay.
So all that kind of stuff is going to be medium to long term. Short term, you'll probably have that in your 30%.
Okay.
So if you're going to a vacation at the end of the year, right? So I would love to come on one of your vacations. You know, if you haven't seen Harbier's Instagram, it's pretty awesome. So,
I haven't been on a vacation in a while. But
he's like the Deseki's most interesting man in the world, right? So
my beard is getting there slowly.
So it's one of those things that short term stuff is going to be part of your 30%. That's why, you know, when we say that, wow, that's such a large chunk of money. But, you know, you're not going to be spending all that on dinners,
right?
Ideally. But some of that will be for like your vacations and things like that. So that's the first step, is create that budget. And that's going to help you in all the other aspects. But create that budget first. After that, for student loans specifically, you need to understand it. There's of course different structures of student loans, how the interest payable is, how you can make your payments. Is it lump sum? Is it only monthly installments? There's a bunch of them. But the vast majority of them are federal student loans.
Right.
What that means is when you either graduate or you go from full-time to part-time studies, that triggers your 6-month time frame before the interest starts.
Got you. Okay.
So you have that 6 months. The point of that is that you can search for a job, go on a little vacation if you want to, all that stuff before interest starts occurring. So you have that 6-month window. A general rule of thumb of understanding is when you borrow money, you have to pay back the amount you borrowed and also the cost of borrowing that money, also known as interest.
The interest, right.
So when you make your payments, so when we make our mortgage payments or car payments, if we're financing it, not all of it goes towards the actual amount that you borrowed. However, in the first 6 months, it does.
Right.
Because you're not being charged interest.
Right.
So that is a great window of opportunity, especially nowadays if people have co-op work coming out and they're going to be signed on as a full employee, or if you're working with a family business or whatever it may be. Nowadays, it's so much easier to find a job. But that first 6 months, throw a majority, as much money as you can into that student loan. Because every single dollar you put in is coming off that student loan automatically. And you can really knock off a big chunk of that before you have to start paying interest.
Gotcha.
So that's a big window of opportunity that not a lot of people take advantage of. And it's a behavioral issue.
For sure.
Because you've been restrained for so long, you're okay, sweet, now let me enjoy my time. But if you can be disciplined in that 6-month window, knock off a big chunk, that's going to really pay dividends for years down the road. Because a good 6 months can save you years of interest.
That's true, actually. And it doesn't seem that much, but I'm sure we'll touch on it again. But like the way interest compounds over time, you know, it could work for you or it could work against you.
Exactly.
So if you're able to chop off a bunch of that principal right away, that's super helpful and something that I wasn't obviously fully aware of back in the day. But you know what's funny is when we're in school, and I know people who are watching this are gonna have heard this as well, that you always hear when you're in school is like, live like a student now, live like a doctor later. And obviously it's to encourage people not to spend all their money and the money that's supposed to be allocated for school on frivolous things. But you hear that over and over and over. So the second you come out and you start working, I'm a doctor now.
I'm gonna live like a doctor.
I live like a doctor now. But you're suggesting obviously to be a little bit more careful about that in the beginning and tempered and even keeled about it. Definitely look at trying to pay off those debts first, a little bit more, and then you can sort of slowly slide that scale over to being more like a doctor over time, right? That balanced approach is key.
Correct. Balance is the key because, and that really is what that planning of percentages helps us with, is as our income inflates, our lifestyle inflates at the same pace.
100%.
Not overdoing it, right? So it's so easy nowadays to live outside of our means, and we're going to talk about that again with the whole Christmas shopping and the holiday chaos that happens. It's so easy to spend money on stuff you don't even realize, right? But I think that's a great point, is be balanced. That's always the key, because you'll live a lot less stressful life if you're just balanced. You know, another good thing is talking about paying off the principal for the 6 months is a good source of paying that off, even when you're in school. Your tax returns. I don't know if it might be hard for both of us to think back when we used to get GST returns and things like that.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it was being $100. Like, I was getting like Slurpees and Starbucks and all this stuff, right? But that GST return, even when you're in school, that can help out. Don't even think of it as your money. Just take that, dump it into your student loans right away, and you don't even think about it. But obviously, depending how much it is, that can be half of a course right there, and you just pay it off automatically. And all those small actions add up
Yeah.
and really help you out. So in your next stage of your life, you want to get a mortgage or get married, you don't have this other payment hanging over your head.
Yeah.
Where, man, I can't afford to do this because I'm still paying my student loan.
Right, 100%. And so the two kind of key takeaways, I think there's obviously number one, the balanced approach,
Yeah.
and then automating everything, right? So you don't have to think, or as much as you can, so you don't have to think about it.
Yes.
And you're not saying, you don't have that human moment of like, I could use this for something else. It's already gone into the paying off the debt and that kind of thing, right? So automation is key.
You take the behavior right out of it.
Behavior, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Okay, that's awesome. So how about we move on to the next phase, that next cycle, business cycle, which is, if somebody's looking to start their own business, independent, whatever, optometrist or whatever it might be, what kind of quick tips and tricks would you have for somebody in that position?
Great question. I went through the same thing when I first started my business. Yeah. Plan.
Okay.
That's the best.
Seems to be a common theme here.
Seems to be a common theme. There's reports all around. I've read many times that 50% of businesses fail in the first year. I've seen 70. I've seen 30.
Okay.
I don't know what the number is, but
somewhere in there.
We can all agree that there is a big amount of businesses that close in the first year.
Yeah.
The question is why. The reason why is twofold. Usually, number one is they have financial hardship because something happened where they weren't planned for and they can't afford it. Their funds dry up and then you're out of business.
Yeah.
Or number two, something happens to their health where they're not able to earn that income anymore, or for 6 months off, 4 months off, and then you run to the financial issue and then you fall apart, right? So what can we do to take care of that? On the health side, generally speaking, when you open up your own business, you're going to lose your benefits. You don't have group benefits.
Right. Yeah.
And everyone needs their eyes checked, right? At the minimum, you got to get your eyes checked.
Annual eye exams, everybody.
That's it. Yeah. There's no cheating on that, right?
Yeah.
So you need to get that stuff done, but you like, what are you going to do, right? So a couple of things you can do is set up. Everyone knows about disability insurance and health benefits, travel, dental, all that kind of fun stuff. Of course, get that stuff done. But if you're in a business, let's use optometry for example. You open up your own business, you have a lot of fixed expenses that whether you're here or not here, your fixed expenses have to be paid.
Yeah.
There's something, if you're in that situation, that a lot of people haven't heard of called business overhead insurance. Basically what that does is it pays your business monthly to pay for your bills if you're not able, if something happens to the business owner. And it's tax deductible. So it's a lot more affordable than people think,
right?
Which is key. And secondly is another unknown quick tip that you can have is if you have a partnership, check if you have a shareholders agreement. That's very important because if something does happen to one of the business owners, you can have that funding come in depending how it's structured.
Gotcha.
Shareholder agreement, it's a lot of people don't realize it takes priority over a will.
Okay.
So if something happens, it's that important. So if something happens to one of the business owners, let's say a health concern, that shareholder agreement will explain what's going to happen. So is that person going to get bought out? Is money becoming the corporation or what that looks like? So number one, make sure you have one written by a lawyer. Number two, make sure you sign it because a lot of people don't sign it.
Wow. Okay.
It's just written there and it's not even signed.
Seems obvious.
Yeah, and then the third thing is make sure you have a way of having it funded.
Yeah.
But those are two things that a lot of people don't realize on the health side.
Yeah.
Is business overhead, especially in the beginning when you need all your money to put back into your business. That's a very inexpensive way to protect yourself. And a shareholder agreement is one of the quick things that everyone seems to forget.
Yeah.
But have that in the beginning while the partners still like each other and everyone's healthy. You don't want to have that when you're going through an issue. It's just that much tougher.
Yeah.
And on the finance side, it's write down everything. For your first year, even to the most granular detail, write down how much everything's going to cost you.
Okay.
For me, I remember I was surprised about like price of toner. I was like, whoa, $400 for toner?
It's expensive.
It's crazy. I couldn't believe it. All my licensing fees, my office fees, suits. We have to dress a little bit nicer.
You gotta look the part.
You gotta look the part. So it's one of those things that there's a lot of expenses.
It's not easy looking this good, guys.
I just follow along, right? So it's one of those tough things that you need to write down everything and have a way to pay for it. So a lot of people, when they're switching from a part-time to or a full-time job to their side hustle, that becomes their business. If that's the case, you know how much money you need to save. Another thing you can do is stay away from credit card debts because interest is huge. Try and avoid keeping everything off your credit card. A big thing that I wish I did before I left my previous job to start my business is before you quit, get approved for line of credits. all that kind of stuff, because you can get better rates and a bigger amount being an employee than being a new business owner.
Right.
I'm not sure if you ran into the same issue, but it's, you go there and you're like, hey, I want a line of credit. No, you can't. So get that stuff before you quit your job or before you start your business. Get the line of credits in place before you make that jump, because you can use that instead of a credit card or even family. If you have family or friends that are willing to help fund your business if need be, make sure you ask them beforehand. Like, hey, I may not need it, but if in my next couple of years, if I need some money, can you help me out?
Would you be willing to?
It's interest free. So there you go.
Well, it might be. It depends on the family member. Yeah. But that's an interesting point that you hear I've heard over and over with different entrepreneurs or business people is like, look for funding or try to get money when you actually don't need it.
Yes.
Like when things are okay, because people look at you and be like, okay, things look healthy, and they're more willing to. You're less of a liability or a risk. You're more likely to get money from institutions.
Absolutely.
That way. So planning ahead is always important in that sense. So that's true, and for sure, I understand. I could see where that stat of like whatever it's 50% of people first year businesses kind of go out of business, because the initial cost of starting a business is so huge. And even if you can get a line of credit to cover the cost of opening a clinic or whatever it might be, you still got to pay that off, right? It's not like they just gave you, here, a couple $100,000, go start your business.
Good luck. Let me know when you're successful.
No, they come for the money right away, right? So you got to be ready to pay that back. So that's something I was forced to. And again, I've never been particularly good with finance and planning and stuff. That's never been a strong suit of mine. Luckily, my business partner is fantastic in that area. But I had to kind of shore up my own weaknesses, at least to some amount, and become a little more literate in that. Absolutely. So for sure, just even the most basic, I think you should definitely follow Vishal's advice and go as detailed as you can. But even just knowing like the basics of like,
where's your money coming from?
Exactly.
Where's it going? What's left over?
Exactly.
If you just know those three things, it'll help out. It'll pay dividends.
And just make sure and this is something that I heard from somewhere else a little while ago, that there's quite a lot of people who don't, no judgment, right? There's quite a lot of people who don't look at their just statements, like their monthly statements. And I get it. Like some is just out of fear of you don't want to see it because it causes anxiety, right? And so you kind of put it off for a couple months, but you never know what you're missing. And that's one thing that I was lucky that I had my parents sort of instill in me, is like every month I just watch them. This is just I learned from absorbed from watching them, is they would open up, this might be more personal, but open up their Visa statement or whatever statement every month, and they would literally go through step by step, product or purchase by purchase, to make sure it's legit. And they just saw, and it helped me kind of learn to keep track. And so when I opened my statement up, I'm like, how much did I spend on food? Right, that needs to change, or maybe I'm okay within my budget. But the craziest thing happened recently, where I actually lost track. We had a baby a couple months ago, right? So I stopped paying it, looking at my Visa statements detailed. I was like, okay, the dollar amount looks right. I paid it. And then luckily I was like, it's been a couple of months since I looked. I should just go back. And turns out there was a whole bunch of fraudulent charges that I missed. People it was Uber Eats and all this random stuff that I'd never ordered before. And it added up to $1,000 over a couple of months that I totally missed. Wow. And I'm lucky that I went back and I looked at it. And I caught it just in time that they were able to reimburse me for it. So
that's how expensive babies are. You don't even realize.
You don't realize it. But there's somebody out there knew I was having a baby. This guy's prime.
Time for me to jump on.
Yeah, exactly, for fraudulent. So even if it's as simple as that, and that seems maybe not, maybe it doesn't seem likely, but it happens. That's not the first time it's happened to me where I had seen fraudulent charges on my Visa bill. So for just avoiding that, but then also the proper planning, I think it's so important to just be more diligent.
Just be aware. That's the biggest thing, right? You don't want to be surprised or caught off guard. Just be aware, check your statements, know where your money's coming in, where's it going, what's left over. And if you know that, you're better, honestly, than 80% of the people out there.
That's it, man. Yeah, that's it, exactly. It's simple and actually fairly easy to make sure you're doing those few things. Okay, so we're moving on from that phase of you're starting your own business or you're going into some other endeavor there to we'll touch briefly on somebody who has an established business, who has some good earnings for a while. They want to quickly do a little bit of planning long term.
So I mean, first off, congratulations for not being closed in the first year, right? So you're the minority on that one.
Good job, guys.
Yeah, you guys did great. But I would say the biggest thing, to be honest, most of the business owners that we meet with and we work with that are in that successful bracket, I suppose, they always say the same thing. I wish I had an advisory team earlier. One of the best investments you can make in that kind of bucket would be to have a good advisory team. Have your accountant, have your planner, have your lawyer.
Yep.
Because now with all the new tax rules, what used to happen is you would have your money sit in your corporation, you pay yourself a salary, whatever's left over, you would leave it there in a low tax bracket.
Right.
But now the government doesn't want that.
Yep.
They don't want you having that money sitting there. They want it back into the economy.
Yep. We'll keep our personal opinions to ourselves.
Yes,
about
exactly.
State the facts on that.
State the facts. It's all factual. So they want that money in the economy.
Yeah. Okay.
So a lot of times, business owners, if you're listening and you're in that situation, you may be getting taxed in ways that you haven't really realized before. Just because if that money's passively growing, that's going to have some other kind of deductions on your small business tax rate and all that kind of complicated stuff. But what I would recommend if you're in that bucket at all as a successful business owner, just get a look over from your accountant or your team. Just like, what is my tax situation? We had a client that had different layers of tax. They ended up being taxed $50,000 more a year.
Wow!
Just from the changes.
That's crazy.
And they had no idea. So
wow, they didn't even know.
They had no idea. Yeah.
So that's sort of the next step, right? So you've done your diligence as an early business owner, and you've kind of you've grinded it out, and you've made some money. At some point now, you got to pass that responsibility, or at least bring somebody in to help you with that responsibility, because it does get too complicated after a while.
Exactly.
And there's too many different people trying to get their hands in your pockets, right?
The highlighter and the stapler don't work that well anymore when you got all that, right? Because now you go from I need money to grow my business, and now my business is grown, but now I have a tax problem. So that's one problem, but it's so complicated to go over granularly. So I would just say, get an advisory team, get them to look at it. If everything's good, perfect. If everything's not good, at least you know you can set a plan in place.
Yep.
The really important thing that I see now is, and I'm sure we know people in the situation, is they don't have a succession plan or an exit strategy for their business. Really create that sooner rather than later.
Okay.
If you want to sell your business off, have an accounting firm come in and evaluate your business. A lot of times, if you're in that older generation, you may be evaluated less than what you think, because simple small steps of just digitalizing your business, getting stuff online, being organized, that can make a big difference, and that can actually 3x your business, just because it's easy for someone to take it over. So get a consulting team to come look at that.
What if you want to Grant Cardone this thing and go 10x?
Oh, yeah, then 10x everything, right?
10x everything, 10x.
Now let's do some push-ups right now. I'm just getting pumped up.
If anybody listens to Grant Cardone or has seen his stuff, everything's 10x.
Everything's 10x. Everything's 10x. Yeah, that's why he wins, right? He's a winner.
You got it.
But that's if you want to sell your business. Get evaluated early so you know. If you want to have your kids take it over or pass off to like a nephew or someone. Make sure the shareholder agreement, we talked about that earlier, make sure that's reflected in that, because again, that takes priority over the will.
Right.
So make sure that's in place. And then if you want to just continue to work part-time and work a little bit less in your business, there's obviously every industry is different, but start looking for someone that you can do like a split business with. So if you have another person come to your business and you pass on the clients and you do a 50-50 split or whatever that will look like, get that stuff figured out now. Because if you don't have an exit strategy as a business owner, we just end up being overworked employees.
Right, underpaid, overworked.
Underpaid, overworked. Sounds like fatherhood, right?
Yeah, pretty much. No, I'm not going to say that, because then my wife's going to come in, and then motherhood is even worse.
Which is true.
There are a lot of other forms of I wouldn't call it payment, but feeling enriched and fulfilled other than being paid when you're a parent.
Yes.
So how early on? Okay, so I have friends and colleagues and that who are sort of in a similar position. They maybe have multiple businesses or multiple endeavors, and they're fairly early on, but things are kind of starting to settle. How early should they start planning this exit strategy, or start looking at, maybe they still want to grow some more? Is now the right time, or do they wait until they think that they're done growing and done acquiring and all that kind of stuff?
That's a great question, and that's one that's asked quite frequently. Earlier the better, because we don't know what's going to happen in life. Right? Like I can say, 5 years from now, that's when I'll make my plan. But what if something happens before that?
Sure.
So earlier the better. And even sometimes you have a good exit strategy and the stars just align, where it's like, wow, I was planning on exiting, 10 years from now, but it's been 4 years and everything is perfect for me to exit out, and I can do different types of work or just more charity work. You have that plan in place. You already know what your goal was. So you can pass that off, get that money, and then, start doing something else or your next business. So it's never too early to plan.
Got it.
But it is too late sometimes.
Oh, that's for sure. Okay. And I've seen that and heard that before too, is like the person who's been, I'm using obviously optometry because it's the most obvious example, but the person who's been practicing until, because they're like, oh, it's such a busy practice, they gross millions of dollars, I'll just sell it for, but it turns out that they did wait a little too long, or they didn't, and now they're selling it for much less than what they thought.
Exactly.
So that's great. Earlier the better. Obviously that makes sense. And what do you suggest for somebody in that position? I was thinking about, okay, maybe I should start planning. Whether they're here, obviously we'll get your information because I think locally you'd be a great person to be in touch with. But somebody who's listening somewhere else, what's the first step for them to get start that process?
First step would be reflecting yourself. I would say what is my situation? Is one of my kids, are they even able to? Like, ideally, we'd want to pass it to our kids, but are they able to, right? What do I want retirement to look like? Just do a little bit internal reflecting. After that, what I would recommend is your accountant is always a great gatekeeper. So you can talk to them, get a financial advisor. Those two right there can help you with the holistic financial side of it. Of, this is, you as a client come up, this is what I want. They're like, okay, I think this is the best way to structure it, and then they'll bring in the right people to facilitate that process.
Okay.
But the big thing first is, is what you want realistic? And only you can answer that, really, right? Like, I have clients that we plan that stuff for, but I don't know their kids well enough to say, so-and-so can run your business, or no, they can't. Nor would I say that, because that'd be awkward if I was like,
overstepping a little bit.
Exactly. So it's one of those things you have to reflect yourself and decide what makes the most sense for you specifically. And then we work with you in the background of help make that dream a reality, right? It sounds cliche, but that is really what we do.
That's great. You're making people's dreams come true.
That's right.
Look at that, man. This is a special guy right here. Okay, so let's move on to that's all really amazing information, and thank you. I know these are pretty heavy topics, so it's tricky not to go super deep, because then we'll kind of lose track of time and lose our audience. But I think there's a lot of really helpful information in there, even just for somebody who's, whether you're starting out or whether you're fully involved in your business for a long time. I want to kind of go into that's more general over time information. Now I want to go more specific to right now.
Perfect.
Holiday season. It's the end of November. It's Black Friday. We're recording this episode on, right? Everybody's going mad shopping. We're here recording.
There's people banging on the doors.
They're like, I want a sale on glasses. What do we do? What kind of tips do you have for us in general for the holiday season to keep track of things, maybe not lose, open up our Visa statement in January and be like, holy, I just spent 10 grand on shopping for who knows what. Give us some advice, your most kind of useful, actionable tips that you have.
Yeah, I'll do you one better. I'll give you the advice that I use myself.
All right. There you go. That's even better.
That's even better. So first things first, don't use your credit card as much as you can.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, don't spend money you don't have.
But what about the points, Vishal?
Oh, the points. The points don't, the points don't really add up as much as we want, right?
As much as we think they will.
Yeah, okay. I use points and I try and buy a flight, but it's a blackout period. I'm like, I can't even fly then. Try as much as you can to stay off the credit card. Okay. Because you don't want to, it's very easy to overspend with money you don't have, because you're like, I'll pay it back later on. But then you're paying Christmas for another couple of months, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So that's number one, is try and stay off the credit card so you don't incur the interest or hit that interest. Number two is it's a big movement now. I see it most the dinners and parties that I go to. It's Secret Santa. The name of it. Yeah. It's Secret Santa. So instead of back in the day buying gifts for every single family member, Secret Santa. Yeah,
we've actually switched to that, and instead of having to buy 20 gifts, it's like 5 now. Yeah. Even though each of those individual gifts are more expensive.
Everything's more expensive now, yeah.
If I could go back real quick about the credit card thing, and that's so important because I'm a sucker for, I use my credit card for pretty much everything. But online is like everything's online, everybody's on Amazon or wherever, and you think, okay, well, the most obvious thing is to use your credit card. But PayPal is available pretty much at every online vendor, and you can link your PayPal to your bank account.
That's correct.
So it's coming straight out of there versus you going to your credit card. So I just wanted to mention that in case somebody was thinking that being there's no option online, but there is.
There is, yeah. You got 2 finance guys you're talking to.
No.
So there you go.
No. It's just something I learned recently.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's a great word of advice. So definitely there's other options out there. Secret Santa is a great way to stay into that budget, because you can have Secret Santa, pick the one person in that group, have a spending limit of $100, $50, $20, whatever it may be, and then there you go. Instead of buying multiple gifts, right? So that's a big one, and also pre-plan what you want to buy before you go to the stores. There's tons of money being invested in marketing, merchandising, of product placement of where it is when you go into the stores. You know, Black Friday, you're going there, you're getting tackled in the lineups, and you fall down. There's like bandages that are perfectly placed there. Well, I do need bandages.
That's awesome.
Ice packs and all this stuff, right?
That's
So
awesome.
it's things are placed specifically for you to grab it on the way out. But if you have a list of specifically what I'm getting, get that and you're good to go. Or, I mean, if you're buying online, just don't even look at the recommended stuff. Just get your item and leave.
People who bought this also bought all of this.
Yeah.
Looked at this and
I don't want to be the sucker that didn't.
I could use 3 different types of headphones.
Exactly. Why not? Why not? So that's a big one. And then another word of advice is for the dinners, potlucks. Those are awesome.
Potlucks are good.
It's really good because if you're hosting dinner, you don't need to incur all that money, spend all that money. There's a lot of people that love hosting dinners.
Yeah.
But you and I were talking before we jumped on the podcast, but we do dinners that alternate between different households.
Yeah.
At the same time, potlucks are really good. And it's good. You get to know people a little bit better because they bring their own specialty dish. And also, it's just a little bit cheaper as far as hosting the big dinner. That puts you back an entire month. Because far too often on the planning side, I meet with my client and we start in January. You know, RSP season, that conversation is starting. Yeah. But like, oh, I gotta pay all my stuff for the holidays, and and they regret it every single year. Oh, I should have done it. I overspent. Next year, same thing. Next year, same thing. So
it's crazy, man. They know how to target. I always think of this clip, and this is totally going on a tangent, but. Have you seen Minority Report? Tom Cruise? He was like walking into the Gap or something, and then they're like, "Oh, Mr. So-and-so, would you like to buy these things again?" And these things, I'm like, we're heading there now, right? It's like you walk in a store, it's like they know exactly who's going to look for what at what time, and you know, and online is even worse, of course, because our phones are listening to us.
Oh yeah,
and you go on your Instagram feed, and all of a sudden there's the advertisement for shoes because Vishal and I were talking about shoes or something.
It's going to be on there.
Yeah, so you gotta build up a little willpower and fight against that a little bit. Against the machine. All right, man. So those are really great tips. There's 2 questions I always ask everybody to close out, but there's one more I want to ask you because as I mentioned in that little intro, you're doing a lot outside of just work. Yes. You're really trying to give back. You're trying to do more community type stuff. So tell me a little bit more about what you're up to there, what you got going on coming up in the future.
Yeah, sorry, before that, I forgot to mention as well, for the Christmas question, I have a blog that I wrote that will be on my website, on all my social, like Instagram, LinkedIn, all that stuff. Yeah. So those are just a couple key points, but if you want to learn more about all the stuff you can do to stay on plan, then just refer to the blog I'm launching in the next couple of days. Awesome,
man. I always do this at the very end, but since we're talking about it now, why don't you tell us wwhere people can find you? Where's your blog? Where's your social and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so a lot of times you can find me at Clarity Eye Care. I'm always here. But
he is.
Yeah, I'm here quite often.
Or at High Street Eye Care. He's popping into either.
Either one, yeah. I pretty much follow Harvey wherever he goes. But no, so I mean on Instagram, I'm very active on Instagram. That's the easiest one for me.
Okay, which is?
Portfolio Planning.
Portfolio Planning?
That's right.
Okay.
So you can find me on Instagram just by searching Portfolio Planning, or my name, Vishal Gill. It'll show up both ways.
Good.
So you can find me on Instagram, my website as well. So it's portfolioplanning.ca.
Good.
So Instagram is usually the biggest one, though. If you want to see my random stories of the stuff I'm doing that you're probably not interested in, or pictures of my dog, and then also financial advice dropped in there too.
That's
a little bit of everything.
That's the best combination. Everybody loves pictures of dogs.
Exactly. Yeah. So Instagram is probably the main spot, and then you can find all my other social as well.
Cool. And people just drop you a quick DM, or can they reach you email? What about email address?
Email address, yeah. So everything really is under Portfolio Planning. So you can go info@portfolioplanning.ca if you have more questions about any of the business cycles. If you find yourself in one of those, and want to know more information, email info@portfolioplanning.ca. Shoot me a DM on Instagram. My email is linked on Instagram as well, so you can find all that stuff there.
Good.
Facebook. I'm on everything except Twitter.
You're everywhere except Twitter. Okay,
Twitter, you don't have too much things going on. Yeah,
it's too much on Twitter.
Yeah.
All right, cool. That's great. So please reach out to Vishal if you're in the Vancouver area. He's always willing to share a lot of knowledge. He's always got a lot of great information that he's willing to share with you for free. You know, he's very, very open about this. Okay, great. So now we know how to reach you. I wanted to ask you a little bit again about what you're up to these days outside of work, because I know you're trying to give back and help the community.
Yes. So a couple of things. One, we just finished up. It's our 4th year of doing a annual hamper project. So,
good.
Yeah, we rent out a venue. We do a sports day like we used to when we were young. Right?
That's
No
awesome.
push pops, no ring pops,
Oh,
that
no.
stuff. But
Okay.
yeah, we this year we did a volleyball tournament.
Yeah.
So we did that, and the whole purpose was to fund Christmas for families that can't afford it on
That's
their own.
awesome, man.
So that's our 4th year of doing that.
Yep.
We spent that money, adopted. I believe it was 6 families this
Wow.
year. Yeah, so it was great.
That's
And
really cool.
it's such a humbling experience because on their wish list, it's things like school supplies, warm jackets, shoes,
Stuff we
things
take
that
for
we take for granted.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, if you're interested in that, if you just want to play sports, that's a great thing. So we do it every year in December.
That's awesome.
Also, I know you talked about that before. I do pro bono planning. So I've been doing it primarily for high school students and university students.
Mm-hmm.
Just to help them get ahead, because when I came out of school, I had no clue what I was doing. I was
sure.
actually get money and figure out the rest.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of pro bono planning of helping the high school students actually learn about, tactical, fundamental tools they can use to help them stay out of the traps of being overburdened in debt. Actually what to do with their money, how to grow their income and investments and things like that.
That's awesome, man.
Because it's such a hard thing to navigate, so that's a big one.
Yeah.
So that's been something that's been really, really good. So we do that one day a month. We do the full day and just do planning pro bono. So
That's fantastic.
yeah. So if you're a university student in the Vancouver area or Lower Mainland, reach out to us. We do it remotely because I'm also licensed in Alberta as well.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So Alberta, BC, doesn't really matter.
Taking over the world.
That's it. One province at a time.
I love it. That's
I only go to like semi-warmer areas, right? So, but yeah, we do remote virtual meetings as well. So
that's cool, man.
Once a month, I'm gonna start putting that on my social so you guys know what day it is and they can book it.
Yeah.
But reach out. We do pro bono is for a half hour at a time, and we'll just kind of run through what that looks like.
That's fantastic. I think that's a message we need to spread. I know when I was that age, actually, I mean, up until now, really, I had like so little information on this stuff. But like as a teenager or in my early 20s, I like did not care at all. Like I'd make money at work and I'd spend it or whatever. It's so important if people have that knowledge now, they can build so much more wealth over time. So that's really cool.
We were weekend warriors, right? We would live for the weekend and spend our money and then pay it again the next week.
Exactly.
So, it's a vicious cycle, but you live and you learn and you share, right? So that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
And then the other project we have coming up in the new year is starting a alumni for my old high school.
That's cool.
There's a lot of university alumni that we're parts of, but now I looked and there's a bigger demographic of people that are graduating high school and not going the university route, self-employed people or just jobs that you don't really need post-secondary for.
Yeah.
Especially it's getting more and more expensive, right?
Yeah. In general, I think, I mean, I don't want to go too deep down in this conversation, but like there's it seems like just a shift overall of like how post-secondary doesn't seem as valuable as it used to based on the opportunities that are available to people. There's so many young entrepreneurs really have done really well without that formal education.
Absolutely.
So they need that training or even earlier than they used to.
Totally. It's like the philosophy of I can either pay to learn or I can get paid to learn. And that kind of what kickstarted my education and down that path as well.
Yeah.
But the big thing I'm starting to see, I have seen over the years, is there's that loss of community. So when you're in high school, you have your extracurricular activities, you have all your high school friends.
Yeah. You
graduate and everyone, we always hear it, you're never really going to talk to anyone from high school again because you graduate, people are going to school, they're working, they move away, and then you went from having that community to now having nothing. So that's why my big focus is to start that alumni. And actually start that conversation of how can we have people still have that supportive community in a different way. So we're going to be focusing on business mentorship. So kids that are in high school that are trying to pick career paths, we're going to team them up with people that can help them in those professions.
Okay.
We're going to be sponsoring extracurricular activities at high school to get kids involved in productive extracurricular activities.
Right.
And then a lot more volunteer work and actually having that community and that why and that support coming out of high school to help better prepare you for the beast that is adulthood.
That's fantastic, man. It is a beast for sure, with many heads.
Yes, absolutely.
That's awesome, man. That's really great. Proud of you. That's really nice to see, refreshing to see somebody who's sharing their information, their knowledge, and trying to help the younger generation. Great job. So on to the two last couple questions that I asked everybody here. And number one is, if you could hop in a time machine and go back to any point in your life now to where you think you could use a little advice, what advice would you give yourself at that time, knowing, you're still a young guy, but you've been through a lot and you've had a lot of good experiences?
Yeah.
What would you share with yourself now?
That's a great question. Besides wardrobe advice, which I think we can all we can all really benefit
I could hop
from
in the
that.
time machine with you if you like.
Yeah, please help me,
kidding.
please. But no, I think the biggest thing is the general philosophy that comfort is the biggest killer of talent. That is a big one where I would say like I do take risks, but I could have done a lot more in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
If I did get so comfortable and allow myself to be comfortable. So that's a big one I would say is, I know you and I are both fans of Robin Sharma, but I remember reading the 5 a.m. Club, vaguely, I'm paraphrasing here, but life's too short to let your talents go to waste.
Right.
And we have an obligation to the people that brought us here to live the best life we can.
That's awesome, yeah.
Right? So that's always been something that stood with me. And the other thing is, one thing I always remember on the daily basis, I didn't really need it much until I started my own business. But one thing I tell myself daily, so I don't have to come back in the time machine and tell myself at a younger age, is count our blessings, not our problems.
That's good.
Because it's so easy to get distracted by the day-to-day stuff, but on a macro level, we're so blessed of where we live, who we are, who we're surrounded with, and the opportunities that we have.
Yeah.
So count our blessings, not our problems, and then don't be comfortable.
Yeah.
Keep pursuing our talent of what we can accomplish, and you'd be surprised what you can do if you just take a chance.
That's fantastic, man. Yeah. That obligation thing, I think, is maybe not something a lot of people think about, but I've heard a few times from different people. If you look at it as an obligation, maybe it's a little more stressful. Some people look at it that way.
Yeah.
But I interviewed Angus Reid recently, and one thing that he said in a talk was, we are here. We're standing on the shoulders of our predecessors or our ancestors, the people who have brought us here, and it's incumbent upon us to, do them proud, and it's our obligation to fulfill our duty and our talents and everything, because they're holding us up here. You know what I mean? So if you want to look at it that way, sometimes that'll give you a little kick in the butt to do a little bit more.
That's what I was saying. Like, my mom didn't work 3 jobs so I can sit here and play Call of Duty, right?
100%, man. That's exactly. And I know, again, that sounds that's a little strong or deep sometimes, but sometimes you need a little bit of that.
Absolutely.
All right, the final question is, everything you've achieved to this point, and again, you've done a lot in your young career so far. How much of that would you attribute to luck, and how much would you attribute to hard work?
That's a great question.
I'm full of them, man. I got lots.
Yeah, so wise. I didn't know. I'm going to rethink everything when I leave here today. But no, I mean, for me personally, I'm not a huge believer of luck.
Okay.
I think that if an opportunity presents itself and you're not prepared for that opportunity, it's going to pass you right by, and then somebody else will get it, and then you're like, oh, that person was lucky, right? So, I mean, I would say, for me, based on my experience, I'd probably say 90-10 or 80-20 of majority of the hard work, because nothing happens if you don't work for it. Yeah. Our social skills, our knowledge in our industry, our hours that we're there. Yeah. We're not going to get the opportunity if we're not even there to accept it, So for me, luck is a crossroads of preparation and timing. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. I like that you gave a percentage there too, because I think sometimes people look at it as black and white, and it's never. I try not to phrase it that way, because it is, in my opinion, as well, a little bit of both. So that's awesome, man. Any final words? Any famous last words you want to leave us with before we wrap up?
No, I would just say for you, I'm a big advocate of podcasts. I think for me, for guys in general, I think it's just so much easier for us to learn from podcasts, because I can't really hold my attention span too long reading a book, right? Yeah. Nowadays, so busy, but I'm a big listener of podcasts, but there's very few that I listen to every single episode. So if there's anyone out there that likes business, entrepreneurship, self-development, all that stuff, subscribe, like Harbir said, share it, spread the word, because you're going to get a wide variety of people trying to share knowledge, trying to give back to the community. And if you can just absorb one thing from every person, then that's great. And I've done that. I've had takeaways from everyone that you've had on the podcast.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna message Angus Reid and see if he has a workout plan for me so I can get a little bit bigger.
The
right?
guy's a beast, man. He's
He's
awesome.
a monster. But no, every single guest you've had has been exceptional. You're a fantastic host.
Thank you.
I think it's such a great podcast. Very clever name.
Thank you.
And it's cool being here and not doing an eye exam. So
Well, we can still do that if you want.
yeah, offline. But no, honestly, thank you for the opportunity, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate that. I think that's the best way to close out. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your energy, man. You got great energy, and anybody who's out there who's looking for somebody to kind of inspire them, Vishal's the man. Give him a shout. No matter what, like even if you just want to say what's up, give him a shout, and I guarantee he'll say hello back with a big smile.
That's it.
Thanks so much, guys. We'll catch you in the next episode. Take care of yourselves.